Welcome to the Sellosophy podcast. Today I'm super excited in Barcelona in this amazing studio with Alex Antolino and a good friend that we got a chance to meet in the digital world through a mutual friend, Chris Doe. And today I'm excited to interview you, man, because you have such a powerful brand and presence in the digital space. I really think you're doing so many forward-thinking things and you have so much experience in the world of branding. You're a creative director. But for my audience who doesn't really have much of potentially may not know a lot about branding, if you could explain it in a very short format, I guess, what is it that you really do to help folks elevate their branding?
Right. So when a brand comes to me or entrepreneur comes to me and they want to work on a brand, we always start with strategy and try to understand where the brand fits within their market and then understand what the company is about, right? And so usually we start with brand strategy. We can also then see if it's needed to adjust the way that the brand is presented, meaning visual identity, the website, all these type of things, the brand expression and the brand main channel. And that's it. Branding to me is all about thinking, what is this company about? How do you want to be perceived? And then see if that actually happens when you put it out.
Now I'm curious because the customers, the businesses that I serve are potentially anywhere between, the small business side, and then some of them are emerging into really getting to a place where they now have a community, a following, space where their brand's important. I guess at what point during a business's life cycle does a company decide, that branding is important? Or at one point should it be important? Should it be important from the beginning when you start? Or is there a place where someone like you would be helpful to really help them scale?
That's a good question. I think branding is always important. The question is, when do you want to really spend money in it, right? I think any company should think about their brand from day one. That doesn't mean, do you need to go and spend $50,000 on it or $100,000? No. But thinking in terms of branding, which in my mind thinks, okay, what is this company about? What's the message we're putting out? How do people perceive us? And then how do we make that happen across all the channels and user touch points or customer touch points? That for me is day one.
Yeah.
Whether that's a a Google Doc document with oh, this is our vision as a company. This is what we care about, our values. And that could be enough for the first months. And then when the company starts growing, you can start making more investments. I don't think a company should spend a lot of money until they're making money or until it makes sense. I don't think I see small companies spending $20,000 or $30,000, $50,000 in a brand identity, for example, just because they need to look good, whatever. But I'm if you're not making money, does it make sense? And I think for me, it's more this idea of the MVP of a brand, thinking, okay, you can have a logo, you can have your typography, you can create something in a brand sprint that could last for a week or two, and where you look at brand strategy, brand identity, and then brand expression. And for me, that's more than enough for a company that's getting started. Now, when it's time for a company to work with someone like me or to hire a branding agency, it really depends on the situation. There's different moments in which a brand might need support, outside support to work on their brand. It could be because the company has hit plateau, for example, they're stopped growing and maybe they want to reposition. They want to think about how to present themselves within the market in a different way, see if that helps. That could be one scenario that I found sometimes. Another one is oh, that's a classic that I really like, is startup starts putting out focus on the product, start creating a website, they put out few social media channels like Instagram, TikTok, whatever, and then 1 year in or 2 years in, they're oh my God, we've grown so much, and then our brand looks like a Frankenstein.
Right.
Our brand is now, this logo, but then the colors were decided 3 months later. It's like a bit of like a lot of decisions made along the way. And now we have this weird Frankenstein of a brand.
Right.
I've seen that was the case of Typeform, for example. I was creative director at Typeform for like 8 years.
Yeah.
And that's when we decided to do a rebrand to kind of like consolidate what the company was about and what the visual identity was supposed to, how it was supposed to be to reflect that. So those are like usually main cases where like a company would consider, okay, we need to rethink our brand or.
Okay. Yeah. I totally resonate with this idea of this Frankenstein thing because when I first started, I was like, yeah, that's me, right? Like when I first started, I was like, all right, I got to think of a name. And like what basically happened was I started writing down like, all right, what would be a cool, catchy thing of what it is that I do? So like the first thing I did, and I don't know if this is the right thing or the wrong thing, but I literally sat on a couch just like you when I decided to go on my own because I was in corporate life for like 15 years in the finance space, but I really enjoyed this idea of impacting people through influential communication, which is, sales and how to sell, but how to do it ethically. And so when I was lost and I was sort of doing my own self-branding, I guess is probably an exercise. The first question that I asked myself was, what are my skills? Mm-hmm. And then I started writing. It really came naturally because I was lost. I was like, who am I? What do I want to do? All I know is I want to be free. I want to be a free thinker. I want to have my own company. And I want to impact people. And I know that I can train people be better communicators so they can influence as leaders or as sales professionals. And I started writing down, well, I know how to facilitate trainings. I know how to create original, trainings based on experiences. I know about finance. I know about lending. I know about leadership. I know this and that. So the next thing I thought of is like, all right, cool. What would be a cool name that I could give it? And it was like, I know it's got to have the word sales in it. And I was like, boost sales, launch sales. And I started going into the dictionary, the thesaurus. Finally, I found it was like exceed sales. I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. Exceed sales. And it's like every time it was like a little milestone, but it was just like you. Like I would go to YouTube, what you were saying, right? And I was like, all right, how to create a logo. And then I was like, build your own weird little logo. And you paid $100. I think it was like 99 logos or 99 designs, I think is what it is. So I did all this stuff. And then I did this really crappy version of it. Then I was like, you know what? I do think I need to do some sort of branding thing. And then gave me a bit more clarity. So I think like my personal journey is a good, I guess, example of I started so messy and so scrappy in my positioning statement. Like I started learning about all these important things to build consistency in the eyes of the consumer. So I see it as so valuable. I want to go back to two things you said earlier in our conversation. You said, and when a company spends 20,000, 50,000, because my audience is mostly people who like numbers, I would say compared to what? So like at what point of sales would you be where 20,000 would justify making the investment in doing a branding, positioning strategy or rebranding, like just to get an idea of like metrics there?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you're going to get me here because I'm not usually, I think I'm really good at branding, but from like a business strategy, like it would be hard for me to answer this question. I'll try to
in your
be as I'll try to be as specific as I can. For example, for a company making, let's say, anywhere between $1 to $5 million a year revenue.
Perfect.
I think you can afford to like spend anywhere around like 50K.
Got it.
That to me, from my, again, I'm no business person, like I'm no like finance, you're the finance guy, but for me, from what I've seen, that's what makes sense. When you're making anywhere between like $1 to $5 million a year, you can afford to like spend like $50,000, anywhere 50 to like 100K would make, it's not gonna hurt. It's
a good reference point because like if anyone watches this and says like, all right, well, maybe my brand sucks and maybe I need to hire Alex to like tell me what I need to do. At least they have a frame of reference to know, okay, this is a ratio of investment that I need to make.
But I'll say I've seen brands making way less. That's where I don't want to get into like, because I don't want to, this is not financial advice.
And it's not a science.
It's not a science, but I've seen, for example, I used to be the brand advisor of a company that it's hard to, we'll say many times, like, brand is hard to measure, right? And because it's hard to measure, these type of conversations make me a little nervous because it's very specific to the situation. It's like, my knee hurts. When should you go to a doctor? When should you have surgery? There's not like a 100% like case fit, like an answer that fits like every case scenario, and it's very personal too. So for example, I'm gonna give you this example of a company called Aulart. I used to be their brand advisor. I'm still part of their board, and the company is it's like masterclass.com, but for electronic music production. Right, so they work with like top music producers in the world to create masterclass boot camps. Super cool company. They're here from Barcelona, and I met them because they were so cool. It was like, oh, I think I can help you guys. So I really connected with the founder, and at some point they had this challenge where they wanted to attract investors, and they wanted to attract first class music producers in the world, and like the identity they had been created by a designer that was fantastic, but had not a lot of experience. So it was like kind of like a junior designer.
Okay.
So it was checking the boxes, but it was nothing out of extraordinary or like nothing that would like catch your attention immediately. So in that case, they were not making that $5 million a year at that time. But in that case, because of what their goal was, they wanted to be perceived as a first-class brand, we decided it was worth the investment to do something like that.
That's an example.
Yes. And so we did a rebrand, and we spent some money to do that rebrand. And this is one of the things that like lead to that was like 2-3 years ago, and talking with the founder, that's something that he mentioned the other day is like, there's some things I regret from the last 2 years. The one thing I have not regret never was spending that much money on that brand identity, right?
Oh no, sorry.
You're in CV now.
Stop.
A ver si puedo esperar rescatarla. No, de veras que...
No me voy a mover.
No, tranqui.
I want to go back to a second thing that you said, which I thought was interesting, because in the world of branding, of course, there's a lot of terminology that non-branding people probably know. But you said a branding sprint or something?
Brand sprint.
Brand sprint.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Well, maybe you've heard about a product sprint where you put a bunch of people together, and for like 2 weeks or whatever time you decide, you focus on building something, right?
Got it.
I don't know if it's a thing, by the way, but it is a thing for me. Brand sprint, I refer to like when we get a founder. I did one like last month or like a month and a half ago. Founder comes to me. Oh, I have this idea. I'm trying to get raise money for this new product we're gonna build, and I'm trying to find like different people to like create the team to build this. The idea is kind of like more or less validated. We're trying to get like a first round of investment.
Cool.
In a situation like this, I'd be like, don't go and spend like $50,000 on a brand identity just to impress a couple of investors. Do a brand sprint. Brand sprint is like, okay, we're gonna get together for like X amount of time. In that case, I think we did a super intense, like for a week or something, or like 3-4 days, where like day 1 was we're gonna focus on brand strategy. Day 2, we're gonna do brand identity, and day 3, we're gonna refine your identity and create like brand expressions. And then you spend like the second week maybe creating the website, decks, like slide decks and stuff like that. That is a brand sprint where like in 1 week you create a brand with the main stakeholders. It's like a sprint, right?
And is the founder involved in every single day as part of that, or? I
mean, in that case, yes, like specifically because it's so early stages for her that we did it like she was there all the time. I've done a few of this. It's usually when a brand comes to me or like an entrepreneur comes to me with something like this, and I suggest a brand sprint, is because they're like very small. maybe they have 2-3 people in the team, or just the entrepreneur itself. And then we do like this. Okay, you have nothing. You maybe have the name of the company. Let's create something that can scale. I did this for creators.org, for example, with Ezra Copperstein. He is the president of Night Media, who is the Mr. Beast management company.
Awesome.
And he wanted to create a nonprofit for to fight or protect the rights of creators. And I worked on a brand sprint with him for a month. And we created a bit of a strategy. It's very high level. It's just to have something. And we created the brand identity, website, and a deck, because that's what you need on like first stage of a company, right? Like slides.
Awesome.
So that's what it is.
So cool, man. And so I want to transition a little bit. I got some questions prepared for you. You better be ready. We did.
I am. Let's get it.
Plan it. What's your favorite color? No, just kidding.
Black.
So I was thinking about like.
It's not even a color. Go for it.
I was thinking about the connections between branding and sales, right? Because like this is all about sales, but I think there's a direct connection. But as I think about effective branding, how does effective branding influence the consumer decision-making process in the digital marketplace? And you hold a high level of expertise in turning content into revenue, right? Like, and that's what you want. You want eyes, you want attention.
Yeah.
How's attention transition? So could you share a little bit about that process?
So basically, how does a brand make you buy shit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's helpful for me. Okay, cool. So it's very simple. At the end of the day, it's like, who says this? Seth Godin. Like, you buy from people who you like, trust, and know, right? So brand is about trust. So you know through probably advertisement, outreach, word of mouth. Like that's the known part is marketing's job. And the trust and probably is a lot of the product, has to do with the product. If you don't like the product, you're not gonna buy, right? But the whole trust part of that sentence, that's brand. Like the fact that you see a logo or a person and you feel something, that is brand. If you like the product, maybe it's useful, maybe makes you feel good, that's cool. That's good product design, right? Or good service design. But the fact that you trust that company to give them money, that is the job of the brand. So it's really hard to measure that, but when you go to this grocery store and you see like Coke and Pepsi, you buy one, maybe yes, you say you like the taste of one better, whatever, but there's something that you feel with these two brands, and one of these feelings is more stronger than the other, and that's the impact that brand can have on decision making when it comes to like customers buying stuff, right? I know this is very lofty and like the way I explain these things, but at the end of the day, brands are about storytelling and feelings. Whoever that says the opposite, I would disagree, because I'll tell you a little bit of a story here. When I joined Typeform, that was like 8 years ago, I had shut down my studio. I had a studio. I was making branded content and advertisement for fashion brands and consumer tech. Brands like Louis Vuitton, Calvin Klein, Emporio Armani. And then on the other side, at the same time, I was working for LG, Samsung, stuff like that, right? Weird combination, but that's what we were doing. Mm-hmm. When I joined Typeform, I was hired as a videographer, right? I had never worked on design, copywriting, any of this, right? The company blew up, and then I became their creative director. And one of the things, when I started giving a bit of like talks, online conferences and stuff like that, people will come to me and be like, oh my God, like how do you become a creative director? What brought you here? And then when I would tell them that I was a like filmmaker, like storyteller, people would be like, how is that? Like, well, you don't know design? Like, how do you run designers? And it was challenging for me because I was like, I don't even know like what to answer, but like that's the job that I have, and I'm doing, it's working out, right? Now, 10 years later, that I understand more about branding and I understand more about media, storytelling is the essential skill you actually need for all of this. Even like, obviously you cannot manage designers if you don't understand design. So then I had to do like a master degree on graphic design and all that. But like, if you know how to tell stories, you probably know how to build a brand. There's the technicalities and like aspects of like understanding the, like how a brand is built. But that's what it is. And I went on this little tangent because that's for me how you measure like that brand. Like it's on the little details, it's on the qualitative type of answers that you get from customers that you realize if your brand is working or not. Decision making one against the other, or even like you see the comments online or like on your channel, people how they feel, if you have returning viewers. There's a lot of metrics that can indicate brand love. It's not just one.
Yeah. And I noticed that more and more these major brands are kind of targeting these micro influencers, or I don't know what the number is, but like the authenticity of having an actual human like do these things to promote these brands or these companies. Like, I'll give you an example of one that's trending like huge right now on Instagram. Some dude, you know, fairly young dude, at least the Miami one, it's a hit.
Right.
I think it's called Mr. 305 Eats or something.
Okay.
What he does is, he does a voiceover in the background, but they show him going inside the restaurant, right? Like picking out a dish, showing a little bit of that decoration of the restaurant. And in the meantime, in the voiceover, then he orders the dish, they show the dish, they show him eating the dish. And the entire time he's just documenting his entire experience. Say, and in Barcelona, you've probably seen some of these people do kind of a similar thing, right? Yeah. Like, you know, here's a restaurant I highly recommend if you.
I've seen this everywhere.
Like, it seems like it's evolving now into some of these unique and different approaches. I guess, what is that called? And you know, how does is that strategy branding, or is that?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I love that you're asking this question. So, I think what's happening right now is we come from an era of globalization, where like your local business wanted to go big, governments creating like unions and stuff like that, and building international relationships. Like everything has been about like even like in Europe, like 50 years ago, we had like a bunch of different coins. Now we have euro. Like we come from this period of like 50 years where like we've been trying to like globalize, blah, 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 and centralize everything. For the last 10 years, there's this new trend, or like this new, I think it's like a new era of like decentralization. We see that with finances, Bitcoin. We see that in terms of like the governments, how like they're operating. And this is also affecting the way we communicate. When you are on social media and you're scrolling and you see some brand saying something, all your alarms go off because you're like, oh, you're trying to sell me something, right? So what's happening is that more and more we're starting to trust individuals over brands. This has always been like that, but now that social media brought decentralization to media, meaning before there were like, I don't know, 5 to 10 channels, CNN, like you had all these different channels and you had to pick one and that was it. Now you have hundreds of thousands of channels that you can watch on your phone, and most of those are from people. Yeah. So what's happening is like media and broadcast is being decentralized, and we're getting used to that. So that affects how brands communicate. And for brands, what that means is like, it's probably way more effective if instead of you posting your messages on your channel, they're always gonna come. 99% of times they're gonna come across as advertisement. If you decentralize those messages and work with creators, now for the person watching that, it comes across as natural, organic, more trustworthy.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know if this is what you're asking, but like a lot of these times for a restaurant, it would make sense to work with 10 creators that may post these videos on like these meme accounts or like on their own accounts.
Sure.
And that's advertisement for them.
And that creates a connection with their community.
Yeah.
You were talking about this thing a second ago where it's like these red flags go off when a big brand like tries to emphasize high level production. I think and you and I were talking about this offline that like, I think it was with All Art or with a different company where like you try to do this like crazy high level production and you got not that good of performance. But then when you got a random guy doing a selfie video, not a random guy, excuse me, a highly talented person,
yes,
they're doing a super authentic random video just off the cuff, that tended to perform better. Like what is that? Like what's happening there?
Right. So we'll put the clip right here so you can watch it. This is basically the music producer that was teaching the masterclass, and so we made a trailer with the content of the masterclass, and then we made. I asked him to record a video, a selfie, basically saying, "Hey, this is my new masterclass. Go watch it." And the new masterclass, go watch it. Video got like, I don't know, I think 7 times the engagement and 3 times the conversion rate, which is insane because I literally did it with this phone right here. Literally nothing from here, airdrop on the business manager tool for the ads. That for me was like, I think 2 years ago when I was living in LA. And that for me was a moment of, realization. It's like, oh my God, advertisement has changed forever. And I do think so. I do think that creation of production / creation of the ads creative, right? Like the ad itself, and the distribution, how the ad gets distributed, has completely changed, and it's gonna keep changing for the next 5 years. I don't think and if you're watching and you're doing paid ads, you know what I'm talking about. Everyone I talk that's doing paid ads has seen a decrease over the last 3 years, especially after COVID, since Facebook introduced this new privacy policy, and especially in Europe where GDPR and all this privacy legislation is more strict than the US. It's just paid ads don't work like that as before because they cannot scrutinize users as they used to. So there's other ways in which you can get your brand discovered through creators, for example. And for me, a lot of people, when they come across my Instagram or something like that, oh, you're the content guy. I get this a lot recently.
What's your brand?
Yeah, that's my brand right now sometimes. And so you're like, oh, you're like a content guy. And I'm like, yes, I talk about content, but 3 years ago, I was like the branding guy, right? And so I think that's interesting. I'm becoming more the content guy because I talk about content. But the reason why initially, and I keep talking about content, is because that's how I think you build brand.
Yeah.
The reason why I talk about creators, the reason why I talk about engagement, how to get views, how to be on YouTube, TikTok, the reason why I talk about these things is because I realized after a few years that yes, you can have your brand strategy on Google Docs. Yes, you can have on a Figma document or on whatever you want to have, a brand guidelines and the brand assets and your logo and all these type of things. But that won't build your brand. That is going to give you a set of tools that you can use to express your company. But what will actually build your brand today is content.
So can I tell you what I think content means to me?
Okay.
And what you're saying is part of that.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to reshift content creation in my head rather as I have to get in front of a camera and become a talking head and do all this thing, dog and pony show, so that people, because everybody's doing it. It was sort of like a self-talk that I needed to shift.
Yeah.
And then when I started seeing it more as a business development activity, I thought about it as, this is a sales development activity.
Oh, yeah.
But later on, I started realizing it's also a branding, it's a branding activity. Because what I'm doing, because at least in my space, what do I sell? I sell knowledge, right? I sell my experience and how to be a more effective communicator and how to leverage technology to drive more sales. So I needed to be able to showcase examples, case studies, demonstrate my skill set. And I was like, what better platform to do it than creating content. What I started realizing, as you were saying, people coming to you saying you're the content guy, like people would actually, first thing, whenever someone schedules a call with me, the one of the first two things that they say to me is, dude, I love watching your little mini 1 minute clips about sales. It's like, I see it and it's like, I try to use it and it's just like, it's perfect. Like it's not too much. You're not trying to like overdo it and it all makes sense. And that's actually the first thing that they say, which is kind of cool. The second thing that they say is, where in the world are you now? Mm-hmm. Because, I travel. I'm in Barcelona right now. And it's such a accelerator of rapport and trust building.
100%.
And what makes it easier is the rest of the sales process becomes really easy. Why? Because they have consumed hours of the things that I do. So I already have earned the trust that they know that I'm the person that can solve their problem. So where we are now is just making the numbers fit, or making the project work, or will it fit in the scope, or what's the best approach towards getting them to achieve whatever the goal is. So I feel like content creation for me has accelerated the sales process, because a lot of people nowadays, all they do, and maybe you have the stats, is like, how many impressions does it take before someone decides to click, set an appointment, buy here, add to cart, or something like that. But I'm sure they have to consume enough content or have enough impressions of the advertisement. Of course, we know about word of mouth, or someone shares a video, a clip of 1 minute, here are 4 ways for you to close more deals or whatever. And someone sent it to that one person, because somebody else sent it, we know that through word of mouth, a lot of sales conversations have a higher percentage of close rates. So I fully agree. Content is branding. I also think it's a sales activity. I also think is a ever evolving business card, because you're constantly shaping what it is that you do and what your brand is. Sorry, I went on a tangent, but
no, you're good.
That epiphany came to me.
I think just to build on that real quick is that I always like to share this metaphor. To me, since the internet became a thing, I think we live 2 lives. One is your IRL life, in real life, that's you, yourself, and then you move around, and based on the things you do, how you treat people, what do you do for people, you have this, people build a perception of who you are as a person. And then our life, our online life, is a reflection of that. Now, there's people who decide to expand and leave their online persona, and there's people who don't do that. But even if you don't do that, there's going to be pictures of you, there's going to be comments of you in like different measures, and that's your brand online. Now, whether you like it or not, you're probably on the internet, and that's what people on the internet perceive of you. Why do I say this? Because to me, content is like going to the gym. Like if you wanna be healthy in real life, what do? You eat well, you go to the gym, you exercise, right? To me, content is like gym for the webs, right? It's like for your online persona. If you want your online persona to stay healthy, to stay relevant, and to have a life online, you need to make content. Like, I don't know if you know any other way, just DM me and we'll talk about it, make a podcast episode here. But for me, that's how you do it. Like, that's, you put content on regular basis, whatever regular means to you, and you keep your online persona healthy. And what happens if you have a healthy online persona is that when people come to you, you don't need to go find people. People come to you, and when you sale, the trust factor, the know factor is already a given, because they called you already, they see your content, they trust you already. So you just need, on the sales call, you just need to confirm that idea that they come. You don't need to sell them anything. You just need to confirm, yes, you came to me with this idea, this is right, and I give you 10 more reasons why this is that you thought initially is right and we're a good fit.
That's awesome, man. Dude, I know that we can spend hours talking about this, but I just want to say thank you so much for letting me pick your brain for a few minutes and just share a little bit of both of our worlds and connecting, how sales and branding has such an incredible, partnership. It needs to go hand in hand in the digital age and all that. But would like to ask, how can folks get in touch with you if they want to do some of the work that you offer? How can they best reach you?
even if like, honestly, if you want to connect, I'm always happy to connect with people. If you want to connect, find me on LinkedIn. I guess probably like most of your audience is on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, so Alex Antolino. Just even if you don't need work from me or anything, just I like to meet people. So just say hi. I'm like a nice human. So just you can connect. And also like maybe on Instagram, Antolino. So yeah, just connect and say hi, and we'll take it from there.
I also want to give a shout out to your content's awesome. He's on YouTube as well. Make sure you follow that stuff. You do some really amazing breakdowns of like these brands, and I nerd out on that stuff because it just gives me so many great ideas. And I know we're going to keep on working together, man. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
And thanks everybody. Until next time.
Just try.
That was great, man.